I spent most of my life beating myself up, spent most of my life being my own worst enemy. And not continuing that cycle is really what helps me push my growth.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Just Like Me podcast. In peer support, we're not talking about revisiting the past or projecting our experiences onto others. It's really about showing somebody else what's possible. And with grace and honesty and a great sense of humor, Amanda shares how she went from surviving her own childhood trauma to building a life that's rooted in agency, joy, and community. Let's dive in.
Okay, so we're going to start here with a reflection question. And tell me if it's getting too deep, So Amanda, tell me, if you could take a look back at who you were at maybe age 7.
Oof, you had to pick the number 7, didn't you?
Oh, um, is that triggering? Is that a bad number?
No, yes, but no, not for me. I've
Okay.
talked about it so much at this point that I'm okay.
Okay. All right. What would you say? What would you say to the child Amanda?
So funny because I was actually thinking about this morning on my way into work. I would say that everything's going to be okay and that you may not feel safe right now, but one day you will. And one day everything will make a lot more sense and you will have all the tools that you need to really thrive and not just survive. But it's okay to just do what you have to do to survive right now, and you're not in trouble.
Can you share a little bit about what you felt like as a child that really wasn't emotionally available to you at that time?
I think there was not a lot of emotional availability at all at the time when I was a child. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if we're looking at that, I really got the roof over my head and the food on my plate, but there were not a lot of I love yous, I'm proud of yous. There wasn't a lot of physical hugs or things like that I was really able to find comfort in. They may have existed, but they felt very empty for me. And I think that was due in part to the general emotional disconnection that I was feeling at the time. And it really kind of felt like I was on an island by myself a lot of the times. A lot of times when I wasn't feeling good or I was scared or I needed that kind of comfort, I really had to provide that for myself in a lot of ways. And yeah, it was difficult, but I found a lot of really good support in animals and my dog at the time, in music, and in journaling. So where I didn't have that emotional availability from my caregivers, I did find ways to try and get those needs met. Just really, it kind of happened really naturally.
Mm-hmm. Would you say then that your healing journey also happened naturally from the time that you maybe were a teenager on as you started to kind of develop your own life? Can you share a little bit about how your healing journey began and what your maybe impetus for beginning that journey was?
Yeah, I think that, most of my life I didn't realize what was happening was abnormal. I wasn't really aware of, the emotional neglect. I wasn't aware of the struggles that I was experiencing as a child. I kind of just, part of me was feeling really guilty all of the time because it was happening to me and I felt like it was a part of what I was doing. Which is why I said you're not in trouble. Because there was a lot of shame and a lot of guilt wrapped up in a lot of my experiences as a child. And so and part of them I didn't even remember until I was in about middle school. And a lot of these things came back to the surface. And that's really when my healing journey began, was when those memories, those very painful, traumatic memories came to the surface. That was really when I kind of hit rock bottom in a way, due in part to me trying to find ways to cope. I did that in a lot of very unhealthy ways. And I think all of the really unhealthy ways that I decided to cope really kind of led me to the more healthier ways and really kind of led me to a path where I had to look at myself in the mirror and be like, is this the life that you want to live? Is this who you want to continue to be? And I think the negative people in my life and around me, my friends were always wonderful. It was mainly negative adults, were kind of my inspiration to become healthy and to get better, because I looked at all of these people around me who were supposed to keep me safe and keep themselves safe and be a positive influence in my life. And I told myself, I don't want to be like those people when I grow up. Like, I don't want this to continue to be what I do. I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. And so I really had to fight tooth and nail for that stability for myself and for that healthy coping, and to really navigate through the system, through therapists, through psychiatrists, and just really fight until I found what worked, who worked for me. And it was a blog post that I found from a woman when I was 13 that really kind of solidified for me that, okay, what I'm going through isn't abnormal. What I'm going through is something that happens sometimes to people. And I think me reading that and filing that away, and when I decided I wanted to stop unhealthily coping and start healthily coping, I really kind of remembered that. It kind of came back to me like a That's So Raven vision of, well, this lady said she did A, B, and C when she was really struggling with repression and all of that stuff happened to her. And I use that as an anchor for myself. And I use that as I'm not alone. And I have a toolbox here. And this is what I can do moving forward. And if I'm always doing what I can do, then I can't say that I didn't at least try. And if this is it for me, then great. But I'm always going to keep trying.
And that motivation, that desire to keep trying is definitely evident today in just your continued healing journey and your the work that you do as a peer supporter. And it comes to mind of what you had said earlier is the idea that others' shadow are not my reflection.
Mm,
Um, that you were not willing to let the unhealthy coping mechanisms of the people, adults around you become your life destiny, become your destiny.
exactly.
And being able to find a resource online I love how you said you filed that away. That was something you held on to as like, okay, this is a story of somebody who gets it. Right.
Hmm. Yeah, and at
Um,
the time too, I didn't have the resources. I felt like I didn't have the resources at 13 years old to do all the things that she said that you could do. So I was like, okay, this is too big for me in this moment. But it's so great to feel seen. And it was just the validation that I needed, because I went to a really dark place of, this is going to be my entire life for the rest of my life. I don't know how I'm ever going to get through this. To, wow, somebody else got through it. When I have the opportunity and when I have the availability of the tools, that's going to be me.
We're going to take a pause here and drop into Amanda's day-to-day as a peer supporter. Here she is as she starts her morning the way she always does, with a little bit of coffee and sense of humor.
Let's see, what do we want today? We have medium roast, French vanilla, Pete's medium roast, Dunkin's fresh vanilla, Tim Hortons decaf. I'm feeling really anxious today, so I am going to do decaf. I don't want to overstimulate my nervous system at all. So enjoy the ASMR of the Keurig coffee machine.
when you started to apply some of that ABC of what the blog had mentioned, can you walk through some of the steps that took for you to be able to address it in real time, and how you've gotten to where you are today, sort of what
Yeah.
that dance has looked like?
A lot of trial and error. It didn't happen easily. There was a bunch of stumbles and missteps along the way. And I think it's difficult for me as well, because growing up, I really genuinely did not think that I would make it past 18 years old. So anything me past 18 is kind of just stumbling along, trying to figure out life as I go. But it really did come to a head and reach to a point, like I said, where I was just over it. Like, I was over struggling. I was over suffering. I was over like feeling like I was just tied to my bed and I couldn't leave. And that's when the blog post really came to me like a download. I was like, oh my gosh, okay. And then luckily at that time, more internet resources were available to me. And so after a lot of struggle, a lot of, dancing with negative coping tactics, I was able to start doing research. And a lot of that was led to fruition by my parents who were unable to change, unable to be moved, unable to be convinced of anything other than what they already believed. They were so stubborn, and I was so unheard by them for all of my life that what really, really was the guiding force was, okay, how can I make sure people never feel the way that I feel? And with that, writing was always an anchor for me the whole time. I mean, I will say that it saved my life time and time and time again. So a lot of researching what I was experiencing, what I was going through, a lot of writing, a lot of poetry. My teachers were really, really influential, and they were really great at helping me realize the potential that I had.
You share yeah, just can you share a story about one of your teachers and, like, in what way they were able to step in? Because I think you hear that a lot with trauma recovery, that if there's one positive, safe
Mhm.
adult in your life, that can mean all the difference to somebody, and so knowing that as an adult where we can step in and be there for children, it's like sometimes we don't take that as seriously, but it is sometimes the one factor that makes all the difference. So who is that teacher, specifically?
Yeah, I do wanna give a shout out to Sarah Dennis. She's amazing. I was really at kind of a breaking point where I was deciding whether I should continue to heal or if, I should go the complete other way. And it was hard for me to get to school, but that creative writing class that I took was something that made me excited to get up in the morning and go do something bigger than myself. It just really made me excited about living again, and she really saw me, that whole class really did, to be honest. I would share my pieces and people would come up to me and be like, "That was so good," like, "Thank you for sharing that," like, "I felt that way too," like, "I can't believe somebody else would, like, share that in class, so thank you so much for doing that." And so, being able to have that opportunity in that creative writing class and for her to be such a safe space for me to feel okay with sharing those things with her and with the class in general was so powerful for me because a lot of my life I just wanted to be heard, and I just wanted my voice to be of value to somebody somewhere. And in that class with Miss Dennis, that happened almost every time.
Mm,
And it
yes.
really, really changed the trajectory for me.
When you talk about progress today, because I know we're never done healing, right?
Absolutely not.
What would you say progress is for you on a day-to-day basis?
I see progress all the time in myself, and it's so cool to see. It's so interesting because if you would have told me this in high school, that just changing the way that I speak to myself internally is really, really important to your healing process, like, I would have been like, "Go away." And
Wait, just what do you mean?
right, exactly, what are you talking about? And it's just so funny because I started with changing the way that I speak to myself, and instead of speaking to myself as if I am that 7-year-old or if I am that 13-year-old or 16-year-old or 18-year-old, of, like, when I spill things, I don't call myself an idiot anymore. I don't project the voice of my parents. I instead go like, "Oh, you're so silly. Accidents happen. Like, it's not a big deal." Because shame is such a huge, huge part of childhood trauma and struggle and dealing with your mental health. And, it's so ingrained in every facet of our lives that I did not want to continue the shame cycle. I didn't want to continue to shame myself when that's all anybody has ever done to me. That's how I felt in the moment. And so progress for me really just looks like having those moments of where I make a misstep. Like I misspelled somebody's name on an email literally just today. And probably a year ago, 2 years ago even, I would have been reeling about that. I would have really beat myself up about it. But today I'm just laughing because it's like, stuff happens. I spent most of my life beating myself up, spent most of my life being my own worst enemy. And not continuing that cycle is really what helps me push my growth further as I move along every single day, and continuing, the general supports of therapy, and always, continuing my coping skills, because there's never enough.
Yeah, and can you name what some of those coping skills are, those healthy coping skills that help you stay grounded when these big kind of feelings show up?
Yeah, of course. I think movement actually, surprisingly, has been a huge one for me that I would have never thought. I've always had a very difficult relationship with my body, due in part to everything that I've been through. And being able to reset that relationship and really starting over and trying to find what that relationship looks like with my body through like the gym and exercise and dancing and walking and things like that has been so beneficial for me. Breath was really hard for me for a very long time, because what a lot of people don't tell you is that breathing can be uncomfortable when you've experienced trauma, and that you literally have to learn how to do it all over again. And that's been really helpful now that I've kind of learned how to do it a little better. It's been really, really, really helpful for me. So those are kind of like my anchors right now. And I've been learning a lot of like more fun breath work stuff, like lion's breath and things like that, that are really silly and fun and kind of help my inner child. I think anything that makes my inner child feel safe is kind of what I am inclined to do. And sometimes that just looks like curling up into a ball on the floor and hugging myself and crying. That's a coping tactic too.
Totally, totally, and yeah, and just giving your younger child a sense of play. It sounds
Yeah.
like so that idea that maybe you didn't get to play as much or have as much safety around to feel silly or joyful in the moment, and so we know just with the nervous system, when we're regulated, play is one of the signs that we're regulated, right? Like that
Yeah.
we're feeling great. And can you share a little about your typical mode of dysregulation and what that looks like so that people understand maybe why movement is what you need to go to, where others might need something like meditation or something a little bit calmer to help them regulate?
Yeah, there's so many modes of dysregulation I experience, even on a weekly basis, that having a lot of tools in my toolbox are really important, because each thing I have to do something different for. So, with my kind of dissociation that has been a part of me really my whole life, but lately it's been kind of rearing its ugly head of just struggling really, really badly to stay in the present moment and to really stay grounded and to stay focused and to really stay here, because I value that dissociation part of me, and that's what I'm kind of like learning is to value these parts, because they once kept me safe. But being able to let them know that like, hey, I'm in a safe place now. I'm not trying to make you go away. It's not necessary for you to be here right now. And a lot of the ways that I do that is through movement. Sometimes it actually causes dissociation, so it can be a double-edged sword at times. But that's been a real help for me, as well as connecting to my breath, and positive self-talk really helps with my dissociation, of having a conversation with myself and being able to kind of tell that part of me like, hey, it's okay. We're not in any immediate danger. I appreciate you being here in this moment. I would love if we could take a step back so I could come back to earth is what I like to call my
Back to
dissociation going away.
Yeah, and that idea that trauma does not have a timestamp
Hmm.
because where it interacts in the brain, particularly in the hippocampus, we don't know sometimes if we're in 2025 or in 1998. Were you alive in 1998? Making
Yeah.
sure. Right. So like just reminding our brain that we are in the present moment. I'm here, I'm safe. This is not then, this is now. So that kind of talking to yourself and reminding yourself in order to stay present and prevent that dissociation.
Yeah.
Is
And
that
I
sort of
think,
what you're saying?
yeah, of course. And I think too, like with the emotional dysregulation that sometimes occurs is there will be moments when my emotion will be way bigger than the current reality of what's going on. And that the emotional reaction will not match up to my current reality. And what I have found to be so helpful for me is to really meet myself in that space of that dysregulation or that emotional reaction and really calm it in a way that would be much like a child. Because a lot of those emotions were like put down when I was a child. A lot of that emotional reaction was pushed away. I wasn't allowed to have it. And so a lot of these emotional reactions that I do have are very childlike because I was never able to have them as a child. And so now I really meet them in that space of like helping them as if I was a child. And, that may look like holding myself when I cry or rocking myself back and forth and saying it's okay. That may look like hugging my partner and having him rub my back and tell me everything's going to be okay. It may look like that kind of connection, or holding a stuffed animal and crying while I lay in my bed. Like whatever really works in that moment for me to really help that child like part of me process through that emotion that never got a chance to see the light of day.
Yeah, and you've said, that grief is just an ongoing process, right?
Yeah.
And it sounds like that is really a space that you're holding for yourself right now, is just the space to maybe grieve what you didn't have or what you didn't get. What are some ways that you are also showing up for yourself today in 2025 and providing things that you need for yourself? You just mentioned like rollerblading, for example, like stuff like that. What are some things that you're doing to show up for yourself today beyond those like highly charged emotional moments where you need to like take a step back and do some coping strategies?
Yeah, I think a lot of that is like kind of what we spoke about earlier is honoring the need to play. I think that's a big one of when I feel in those like silly whimsical modes, like capitalize off of it. Like, let me go rollerblading. Let me go dance. Let me go to Kings Island, right, to ride a roller coaster. Let me go paint or color. I've spent a lot of time listening to music and coloring lately because it's like, what I always used to do when I was a kid, and I wanted to get back to that. A lot of it too, I've struggled with food a lot for my whole life, and a lot of that looks like making new foods, trying new foods, which is really big for me, and food can be particularly dysregulating, but when I'm in that playful mood, I like to incorporate food and like new food or different food so that I can kind of like re reassess what my relationship with food is and really rebuild that relationship back up. Of I'm in this really good mood, so I'm gonna try something new. I'm gonna dance. I'm gonna rollerblade. I'm gonna do all these really fun things, and I'm gonna watch these silly shows. That's another thing too. It's like I watch really corny, cheesy rom-coms that like, and I read young adult fiction novels where it's just like they're clearly written for high schoolers or early college, and it's about two people falling in love or friends to lovers or things like that. And just like reading those kinds of books really instills a lot of joy in me, and just finding pockets of joy in my life in ways that I was never really able to do. I know 2 birthdays ago, I actually went to the aquarium for my birthday. And this year, for my 30th birthday, I actually threw a Y2K themed birthday party. So we all
Nice.
dressed up in like super bright clothes, and we all looked like Hilary Duff and Lizzie McGuire. And and it was just so much fun. And I put on like a Y2K playlist, and we really like leaned into that, like, okay, we're like 7 years old again, and we're just gonna have some fun. And so we did, and that's what I did for my 30th birthday because like those things are all so, so, so reparative to me.
Beautiful. And I mean, I love the word reparative. What would you say how do you feel when you do playful activities like that? And how would you say that compares with maybe the feeling of being alive you used to have, Like what is it like to feel into those moments? And why is that different from previous stories of Amanda's life?
Yeah, I think In the beginning, it felt really scary and it felt really unsafe because my body was not used to it. I can look back at my childhood and every moment of fun and whimsy and silliness was always overshadowed by something sinister and scary. And so I just take those moments to really honor that celebration and honor that progress that I've made and honor that little part of me who I keep a little picture on my desk and honor that little part of me that wants to play and that never got a chance to safely play. And so it feels really empowering for me. It felt scary at first, but it's empowering now that I've practiced enough and kind of gotten over the hump of ooh, this is scary. Like I'm not supposed to be doing this. I'm not supposed to be playing. I'm not supposed to relinquish control, right? And so now like by grounding myself in the fact that play is safe and fun is safe and going to comedy shows and being able to like full belly laugh and like, just finding those moments of safety and fun has been really, really, really awesome. And it feels really, really good. And it's kind of like a testament that I make to myself of all the progress that I've made.
Absolutely. And I mean, would you say that in the past that would have triggered maybe dissociation or, a full belly laugh at a comedy show would have maybe started, but then you would have been like, oh, there's something around the corner. I shouldn't be this happy. Or
Yeah,
is that
absolutely.
okay?
Absolutely. That's something that I would definitely actually there was a moment in time pretty recently where every time that I would actually like laugh and get into a moment of me like, when you're like with your friends and you're laughing so hard, you're like crying and you can't stop laughing and it's such a wonderful, beautiful feeling. There was a time when like every time that happened to me, I would start having a panic attack. And so it
Right.
was such a such a black and white feeling of I'm literally crying because I'm laughing so hard in this moment, but I'm also like because I'm having a panic attack, but I'm still laughing because it's funny. And so like there's just different parts of my brain that react so differently to things that it's just so interesting to navigate. But now in this moment, I would be able to really like full belly laugh and it'd be okay.
And I would just name I can so relate to everything you just said and how you named at first it's scary and the panic attacks and then moving forward and moving into it and not letting that be the thing that stops you,
Hmm.
I think is also a testament to you. And that goes back to that value that you have of I'm just gonna keep trying. I'm just gonna keep trying. And knowing the resources, having the knowledge that this is the correct path forward and that let that guide you, not maybe your body's reaction and kind of giving your body space to react that way and giving it
Hmm.
some reassurance and then going back to
Yeah.
that this is a new timestamp. We're making new memories here.
Yeah.
Um,
And sometimes
yeah,
that's not possible. Sometimes there will be a moment where I'm not able to convince myself that it is 2025 and I'm 30 years old, and that's okay too. Like I've learned that fighting the panic attacks or fighting, the repressed episodes coming back up really doesn't do well for me or my nervous system. So allowing those to come and to move through, I have found much more effective for my journey of, when I am having a panic attack, I used to really, really fight it off and like push it back and hold it down. Like you're not going to take over me, like, that kind of thing. But now I just kind of let it come and let it move through and it just goes away so much quicker for me after when I just like sit with it and I'm like, okay, I'm freaking out. Let me just do some coping tactics. Let me just sit in it. Let me breathe. And a lot of times when those panic comes, I just really need to have a good cry. And a lot of times having a good cry for me will help the panic attack. And then I'll be able to move through it a lot easier. So
and
just
crying
me.
is so regulating, right? Like
Yeah,
being able to
exactly.
cry fully and not stop or not be like, I shouldn't be crying this much, but just releasing all of those tears
Yeah,
to
exactly.
the finish point, right?
And I think there's something to be said too about the scary looming fear of having repressed memories and knowing that at any time those could really come back until probably I'm old and gray, right? And just kind of helping calm my nervous system and calm myself down of knowing that, hey, if that were to happen, it's not going to be like it was when I was 13 years old because I have all of these tools now. I have so much at my disposal that's going to help me through that thing, right? I have a really, really great therapist now that if anything really were to come up, we would be able to really tackle it head on. So just kind of reminding myself that, hey, it's 2025. We're safe now. We have all of these tools. We have all of these things at our disposal. And if something like that happens, it's okay.
Mhm. Yeah, and I want to ask you, as you've built this future for yourself, you are future Amanda, to that 7-year-old. Are you trying to build a world beyond your own for others through your story? Because you've built this world that is now much safer and much more in your control than it was when you were a child. Do you, in your work as a peer supporter, are you trying to also build that kind of world alongside others? Or what is your future kind of vision when it comes to sharing your story and sharing your voice, which you do so beautifully and do so well
Oh,
in
thank
all these
you.
areas?
That's beautiful. Yeah, I think it started before I even knew peer support existed. I feel like at heart, I was a peer supporter. I ran an open mic night when I was like 18, 19 years old. And the safe space that Miss Dennis had created for me, I was then able to create for others. And they were sharing things, that they're like, I've never told anybody this, but here I'm going to tell it to a group of people. And, just seeing people have a platform to be heard and then to, as a result, be validated by the audience of like snaps and like those verbal like kind of like agreements, was such a beautiful experience for me. And that's actually how I got the job at the recovery center, was through running that open mic night. One of the people who used to come to it worked at one of the behavioral health organizations here and was connected with the recovery center. And Bill, who works here, was actually looking for someone to run some after hours events. And so that's where I came in. And I found very quickly that using my voice and my experience to help other people was a job description, was, an actual job that I could have, which I never thought. So cool. Ben always used to say I didn't know having lived experience with mental health was something I could put on a resume, was something that like was required to put on my resume. And so it was really
Totally.
cool. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
really cool to be able
Usually
to
it's
have
a
that.
stigmatizing,
Mhm.
right, aspect of a job or a resume, and you would want to sort of shield that. And you still hear today people in other professions hesitating to share stories of mental health publicly because there is a stigma that if you've
Mhm.
gone through something, that means it can rear its head again, and you'll be a big problem as an employee due to that. Now, from your perspective, what would you say to that fear that maybe other professions have in hiring somebody who has publicly come out about their mental health, their recovery journey?
That's a really good question. I think there is so much resilience through the struggle. And I heard somebody say once, I can't remember who said it, but as a peer supporter, our wreckage is our resume. What we've gone through is a testament to the work that we are able to do. It is also a testament to how hard of workers that we are and how resilient we are and how adaptable we are to conflict and circumstance. And I think that is the biggest testament of lived experience, is that, yeah, there may be days when backsliding happens, but we have tools in place to mitigate that. And I have worked with people who have struggled with mental health, and I have worked with people who would not necessarily identify with having lived experience with mental health. And the difference is really, really apparent, at least to me, um, of that resilience factor and of I just can see the empathy a lot more. And you can see, wow, this person is really meeting me where I'm at versus it's like the Brene Brown sympathy versus empathy. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
would just show somebody that video and tell them this is exactly it. Like,
Brene Brown is often the answer to many questions.
exactly.
Um, yeah, no, and I think that's so true. And I would also say, just to add to that, I think this is partly the point you're making, is that many people who are in And many adults have not maybe come to terms with their mental health
Mm,
journeys enough to identify with them. But those that have, it often means, yeah, that they've addressed what's underlying a lot of our relationship problems
mhm.
or our inabilities to meet our goals or be successful head on. And so there's a lot of, I don't want to say, they're more likely to be successful on the job, but their success is going to be more, they're going to be more accountable for their own success and their own failures because they've taken a look at themselves closely enough to say, yep, these are things that I need to work on. And that's what I think of oftentimes when I think of somebody who's come out publicly about their mental health challenges is, wow, they've done a lot of work,
Yeah.
on themselves, which we all can do.
Mhm.
Um, I'm wondering if you can kind of share a story or a time as a peer supporter where you felt that your journey and all of the healing and tools that you've learned along the way came to play in another person's life and you were able to see how you could be a support for them in a way that maybe somebody who hadn't gone through all that you had been through would be able to support them.
Yeah, definitely. I think I see that a lot in my everyday here working as a peer supporter, especially in moments where I will have peers come to me in kind of a dysregulated state, and I will sit with them and I will meet them in that kind of pain and validate their experience. And then them really feeling better and visibly looking better as they leave my office, I think is amazing. I actually, as we've been talking, I remembered another experience that I would love to share is I was working closely with a peer once a week. We were talking every week, and there was a lot of underlying shame being experienced, underlying questioning of their dysregulation, why it was occurring. There was even some paranoia being experienced. And they had not at this point self disclosed a lot of what their experience was. But as they were speaking and what they were speaking about, I could really tell, like, okay, we have very similar stories. And maybe if it's not similar stories, similar ways in which our stories manifested for us. And so I really sat with them in that, paranoia and that dysregulation. And I shared my personal experience. I self disclosed healthily as you do with a peer supporter. And I said,
Well,
well,
what does that mean exactly? Like, can you give that some frame just so that those who don't know anything about peer support might understand? Because a therapist often doesn't disclose their personal story, right? And that's one of the
yes,
differences between peer support and therapy. So, what would that look like in practice for you to disclose and not project? You're not projecting onto them
of course.
or asking them to hold your trauma.
Yeah, I
Ultimately.
I like this little phrase that I coined, real versus raw, where you talk kind of about the real of what happened, but not the raw, open experiences. So for me in that moment, what that looked like is, I was like, my parents, they were very neglectful, which then led me to experiencing these emotions. And that was really hard for me to deal with. And this is kind of the way that I got through it. So it's very important for us as peer supporters to meet other people where they are, but to always use a resilience lens, right? To always use a kind of powerful, empowered lens on our self disclosure. So it's not sitting here and being like, this and this and this and this happened to me. And then it made me do this and it made me do that. It's about really kind of getting curious about the other person's experience and then utilizing yours to make that connection. So with this person, as I kind of self disclosed a little bit of my experience of, I kind of feel that way sometimes too because of this thing. And this is the situation that really helped me, or this is the coping tactics that I really did. How is that landing for you? Right? Does that feel like that resonates with you? Or, and just asking those kind of follow-up questions is really, really important because the point of peer support is to put the power into the hands of the peer, right? Is to kind of help give them the tools to empower and uplift themselves, but really sit there and be a cheerleader for them along the way of saying, like, I went through this and it made me do this, but this is how I came out of it. What does that look like for you? Does that look like that would land for you? Does it look like it would look very differently? What's worked for you? What hasn't worked for you? Let's work on this together. Let's have a meeting of the minds together of how we can get through this for you together, which is way different than therapy, because therapy is really, getting into the nitty gritty of things and doing a lot of processing, and sometimes a lot of somatics and a lot of those other things. Whereas peer support is really just being a cheerleader and asking questions and letting the peer know that, hey, you can do this. And because I did this too, you can do
Yeah.
that because I've also been
Mhm.
through it and I did it and I got to the other side. All right, welcome in.
Thank you.
So what's going on with you today?
Well,
Do you mind if I eat my lunch while we talk?
me too.
Okay,
Happy
awesome.
Friday.
Happy Friday!
What's going on is it's Friday, and that's usually a good thing. But this weekend, my girlfriend is at work, and she works overnights and stuff, and all day. So I'm kind of concerned about this weekend because I have a lot of free time.
What are you concerned about it?
Well, I mean, for one, being bored, because when I get bored, then I do weird stuff.
Fair.
Um,
Anything exciting that you'd want to do this week?
that's a great question. Okay, yeah, there is. The Women's College World Series is going on. Oh, it'll be over.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, right?
What about pickleball? I know you like pickleball.
I
Got
love
any
pickleball.
plans this weekend?
No, I would like that.
You can go to an open play. They have those all the time.
I know they do, and they're near my house. You know what? I could do that. You know what? Having something to look forward to is a big deal. That's a nice
Absolutely.
thing. I wish it were football season. It'd be a lot easier.
Do you want me to get on?
As we wrap here, I wanted to just talk about, the community and the life that you're building for yourself and why it's so important for everyone to build a community and life for ourselves outside of our mental health diagnosis, outside of our identity with a mental health or recovery journey. So tell me, what does that look like to sort of move on while still in healing and still in recovery and always a lifelong journey? What does that look like, and why is that important?
For me, it has been a difficult journey that I'm still personally learning, because as somebody who struggles with addiction, workaholism became very prominent in my life. So a lot of my young adult life starting to work here was built around being in the helping profession, working at a recovery center, being a peer supporter. It was my whole life for a long time. And I, as one does, burnt out and had to restabilize myself and refigure out, like, okay, what does community look like for me? What does life outside of peer support look like? My partner now really helped me out a lot with this. We've been together for about 4 years. So it's been a bit of a journey in discovering, like, okay, I need to compartmentalize and I need to, like, put work away outside of work. And I really need to invest in that play, right? Invest in those really, like, community oriented things, and not to make every friendship I have based upon us talking about our childhood or just, talking about all of the stuff that we have going on, but traveling, going to concerts, going to shows, finding those kinds of community in music and in open mic nights, getting back into what I liked to do. And I think that's what we kind of help people here at the recovery center with, and peer support tends to help people with, is that we have like 40 hours of programming, all completely different types of classes. Some of them are tools that you can utilize to help with your mental health journey. Others are things like yoga and gaming for mental health and Tai Chi. Right now outside my door, they're doing a weightlifting class, right? We have like so many different kinds of things. So it's just about kind of learning what you like again. And that's a big part of kind of what we like to do here. And kind of what peer support is all about is like empowering people to find themselves again, and if not again, for the first time. Like for me, it's for the very first time I'm finding myself because I didn't feel safe enough. And so it's offering people a safe place to be able to find themselves again, which is why I think peer support in community settings is so powerful.
What do you think about this season of your life? What would you want your future self to know, to remember? If you're now imagining 60-year-old Amanda,
Oh gosh.
what do you want to say to her?
Yeah. I think it's so hard to think of myself at that age because I actually, when I was on my way into work today, did a visualization of me writing a Post-it note on the window of my childhood home where I used to hide from everyone, of saying, "You're gonna be okay," and, like, putting it on the window for my younger self. And so I'll take that visualization and kind of use it here in a different way of having my 60-year-old self maybe write a note on the window right out here, the recovery center, or maybe write a note at the window of my apartment to say that you're going to be okay and it's all going to work out and you are going to live a rich, full life, not riddled by monotony and symptom management.
Finland. Ah, beautiful. You're doing good, right? You're doing amazing. You're doing good work.
Thank you.
I love that. I love that visualization of a Post-it note for your younger self too, to put that in the window or the area where you used to kind of go to hide or to stay safe. I might borrow that one myself. Thank you so very much. I'm so grateful for all that you do and everything you do for the Ham Here campaign, all you've brought to this work as a peer supporter and in Ohio. Just the advocacy work you do is incredible. So thank you so much, Amanda.
And thank you, Katie. I really do appreciate all the opportunities for me to instill all of my knowledge and everything that I have learned to the youth of tomorrow. Because I think, like I said earlier, peer support happens best in community. And that's really, really what you've built through the Ham Here campaign, and everybody involved is just incredible. And this is something that would have truly, truly saved my life when I was in high school if I were to have just a space where I could go and learn tools for coping and then find other people who are like me, and then having all of these opportunities professionally to like go to conferences and learn, how to be a facilitator. So cool and so amazing and such an incredible opportunity. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Amanda, for sharing how you've been doing the work. It's messy, it's real, and it's ongoing. Join our peer support and youth-led community at heyimhereohio.org. And please like and share and subscribe and review and all the things wherever you find our podcast.